Hello, Robert. That was such. I just got my words. Anyway, some way to start the podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fourth Tier Fever. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you've all had a great Christmas. It sounded like I was drunk then, so I can promise you I've very much laid off the Christmas fizz now. We're back to it. Happy New Year as well. We're back for 2025, and we're back recording again. And we're talking about the teams that we follow every week and getting pretty miserable about. Maybe not in Jake's case at the minute, loving life and a trip to Man City next week. Lucky so and so. And then we've got Keiron, who's there with pretty mardy at the minute. His team's not doing well. We're just inconsistent. I've mentioned those two because they're here with us. Happy New Year, guys. How are we?
I am great. We can't concede. We can't lose. We're going to a Premier League side away next in the FA Cup. What isn't there to be happy about?
All right, for some. It's like, so boring. Hello, Keiron. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Happy 2025 all. As opposed to Jake, we can't score. We can't keep the ball out of the back of the net, and we've got a trip to Port Vale in 2 weeks' time. So, really lucky guy, me. Really, really fortunate in terms of how the football has went. And, I don't know what else to say. As you can tell, fantastic mood because we're here recording once more. And I know I'm going to have to talk about a football club that I've refrained from talking about for the past month or so.
It's just very, very different styles. Jake's team is good. Kieran's team is dreadful. And my team's just so infuriating that wants to bang my head against the wall every time. With our, we either win one, we lose one. We win two, and then we lose two.
The three wise men, if you will. The three wise men of League Two.
You could put it like that, basically. But look, I don't. Yeah. We're okay, but oh my god, it's so infuriating. We'll talk a little bit more at the minute. We'll look through some of the teams over Christmas. We'll see how they've done. We like to get your thoughts as well on your club. We're always happy to read what you put. So whatever you put, is greatly appreciated. Right, we should probably start with the obvious news. We're recording this on Sunday, the 5th of January. There was 4 games that should have taken place today. 3 of them called off. But I think it's probably, before we look at some of these teams, I think it's probably important we look at Gillingham because, my God, they've had a heck of a day, haven't they? They should have been at Chesterfield today. Their game was called off because due to the weather. Probably not surprising, with how bad the weather has been today in some places. But obviously, that's not the big news. We've got to talk about it because they have this afternoon or this evening a parted company with their manager Mark Bonner. I'll just reading a little bit of the statement. The club can confirm that it's parted company with first team manager Mark Bonner. Mark arrived at the Priestfield Stadium in May 2024 following the departure of Stephen Clements and managed 28 games across all competitions. You can read the rest of the statement, but I'll just read this little bit. We regret we have decided to part company and I'd like to place our record. My thanks to Mark and wish every success for the future. That has come from Managing Director Joe Comper. Right then, quite late, Gills. We'll obviously talk about the man they've appointed in a little bit, but I want to hear your thoughts to start with. The sacking of Mark Bonner. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first. Why not? It seems a bit bizarre because obviously they last played on Thursday and today's Sunday, so they've waited a little bit of time to get rid of him, but it wasn't surprising because they lost 3-0 to Bromley and it seemed inevitable after the run they've been on over the Christmas period. They've lost more than they've won all season. There are big expectations of them coming into the season. It's yet another manager that's gone, and they had such a promising start like they did last season, and it's just not going their way.
Now, I think Mark Bonner came with a bit of a reputation. The job he did at Cambridge, fantastic stuff. Unarguably, well, most likely, on less resources. Took them up to League One, kept him there for a little bit, kept them up. And I just felt like his time had just come eventually for that. Got the job at Gillingham. Initially, I was very impressed with the appointment. I really like Mark, but where do you think it's gone so wrong, Keiron? I mean, because they started the season pretty well, was it? And then they've just had that awful run, and it sort of just carried on. They've had a couple of wins, had a couple of back-to-back wins over Salford, of course, and MK Dons, haha, Luke. The FTF doing us proud there on that occasion, but another. They've lost the last 3. Following on with that run, with I think Luke mentioned it, expectation. I think it seemed inevitable, especially after the Bromley defeat for me.
Yeah, it felt inevitable, didn't it? We looked at the additions over the summer, for example, and last season we know that they struggled to score goals mainly. That was their main problem. So to almost fix that problem, they brought in players who are well known for scoring goals at this level. And they, like you mentioned, they started off really well, and we thought, you know what? Gillingham and the Mark Barner, they're doing really well here. They're finding that consistency, and they're winning games convincingly, which is a problem that they had last season where they wouldn't. They kind of fallen into the pattern again that they were at last season. I don't know whether it was a Mark Barner thing, or I don't know whether it's just the area around Gillingham, around the Breezefield Stadium, where they can't score again, which I think like Luke mentioned, like we've all mentioned, with their expectation of fighting for top 7 or fighting for promotion as is, you can't really expect a manager to stay when he's managed half a season and they're currently sitting 14th in the division. I think there's enough time for a little bit of a turnaround, but like you mentioned, we'll talk about the appointment and whether a push for top 7 is realistic for them this season. But yeah, like you mentioned, I think with the run that they were on and the expectation that was there, it's not overly surprising.
I've seen a couple of Gills fans, as much as obviously Mark Barner has taken the brunt of it and has lost his job as a result of it. Of course, it's a results-based driven business. I mean, you certainly look at it, the 14th in the table at the minute, they've scored 22 goals, which is one of the lowest again. And, we've always had indications that Gillingham they've struggled to score goals since they've been in League 2. Let's not beat around the bush. This is a problem that has grown in them for a long time. They've conceded 24, by no means, the most. But the biggest thing they've been on the wrong side of results. And when you're not, when you ultimately for, the side with the ambitions and some of the players that they've got, because they've got some very good football players who I can imagine that they're earning quite a bit with some of the money that Gillingham spend. You certainly expect him to be, a lot better than what they have done. But, they had that run where they lost. Was it 5 defeats in a row? Was it? I mean, they drew with Swindon. They drew that late. That probably felt like a defeat. I think we mentioned it at the time. And it's just sort of carried on there. I'm just looking at it. 2 wins in the space of the 6th there. F7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They've won 2 in 14, and they've only drawn 2 of them. You're always asking for trouble with that sort of form, especially for the ambitions that Gillingham have. Is that something that we agree with?
Yeah, absolutely. The side they have should be challenging for the league. I think we put them really high up in when we ranked our transfer window, and our predictions had them certainly in around the playoffs. So to be where they are will be disappointing for them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just one more thing before we move on to who they've appointed. I've noticed a couple of Gills fans that have mainly took blame to the players. Is it maybe a case in which they might have, just decided to push the manager under the bus? I think that's probably the best way, because I feel like at times they have done, to be quite honest.
There's the potential of it, isn't there? I mean, we mentioned the players, some of the players they've got, the imagination of what wage they're on, the division they were in. You probably say on paper that squad is far too good for the division, and when it's not performing as you'd expect it to, I don't think you can do anything really from a player standpoint other than say, we're not, other than maybe hint at we're not doing too well under the manager, the regime doesn't kind of fit the way we're playing. Again, which is bizarre, given how they went from the start of the season where they were winning games comfortably and convincingly to now where they can hardly string a pass together. Never mind win a game, but there's definitely the potential, isn't there? Especially with some of the players that are at that club and the qualities that they evidently show.
Yeah, because eventually some of those players should be right up there. Gillingham are 14th, and they deserve to be 14th with their recent form at the minute after a season which started pretty well. They was right up there for a little bit of period, early doors, but it just proves how quick the season can turn. But just a quick one-word answer: sacking Bonner, correct decision?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. And it's a shame because I really like Mark Bonner. He seems like a very nice bloke. But unfortunately, being a very nice bloke, is not winning your football matches at the minute. He'll bounce back from this, though. I have no doubt he will. It's just a bump in the road. But yeah, I can't help but think it's the correct decision. We should probably mention the man they appointed, because in that statement in which they parted company with Bonner, they said they were going to make a statement in the evening. They have done in the evening. And it's a name I really didn't expect this. This caught me by surprise a little bit. Gillingham have announced that John Coleman, the former Accrington Stanley man, will be taking charge of the Gills until the end of the season. I mean, yeah, I was a bit shocked. I was a bit. First things first, I'm delighted to see John back in work. He's a man. A very long association with Accrington Stanley, did absolute wonders at the club, and I felt that he should have been treated better at the end of his time. As much as maybe things did get a bit stale between him and Handy Holt, but I do think he should have been treated a little bit better than what he did do. I'm quite surprised that he's come quite down south, because he's obviously he's up there mainly in the north a little bit, but I think maybe with an opportunity like Gillingham, comes available and they've come knocking at the door. It's quite hard to turn that around because they are an ambitious club. It's an interesting appointment. I quite like it. I think the biggest thing for me is the fact he's no nonsense. He'll sort them. Whether he'll sort them for the case of, is the damage been? It's an interesting one, because I fully expect Gillingham to spend this January. They have done for they've spent the last few windows, so they're not scared of spending money. But there's maybe that element to it that this is only a short term thing. They'll assess it at the end of the season whether Coleman takes them forward. We'll have to see what happens. I think it's too early to say if they do. They've got cash anyway. They're not afraid to spend, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. Whether it'll be enough, to shoot them up the league, only time will tell. We've mentioned about the quality of the players they've had, but I think one thing's for certain. I think some of those players will get one hell of a reality check, if anything. What are your thoughts, then? What are your thoughts?
It's an interesting one, because he's never really had that many resources available to him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in January, and especially for the players that have come under criticism of the fans for getting another manager out. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to a bit of a no-nonsense manager of John Coleman's type.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah, the thing that I really like about it, and Jake alluded to it, is that under his time at Accrington, you wouldn't imagine he would have had that much in terms of resources, and I think he more than overachieved at that club. Got them as high as League One, winning the division, and I'm really excited to see whether he can almost repeat that albeit it's not as long of a time, but it could potentially be come the end of the season, depending on how it goes. It really intrigues me how he's going to get on with the incredible quality of player Gillingham have and the incredible amount of resources. It interests me to see if he's going to flourish, because I really feel that the one thing that Gillingham needed was that kind of character in the back, who is just going to say, right, we're not good, we're not playing well enough, and it's just going to, like you said, Jordan, cement the idea into the players' heads and give them a bit of a reality check, because I think that's what you need when you have those kind of players. They can almost potentially feel that they're too good for the level, and it's a bit of a reality check that that's currently where we are, and we can definitely push on and move on with the quality we've got. So for me, it really excites me. I think that, like I mentioned, he had very limited resources at Accrington. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a beneficial move for him. I think him having this amount of resources at Gillingham is only a positive.
Absolutely, and I agree. I agree with all that. It's hard to not look past the job he did at Accrington Stanley. The affiliation that he's had with that club, there for years. A legend. It's as simple as that, legend, and has performed wonders for a long period of time of at that club, who are probably, in terms of the EFL, one of the biggest overachievers for pretty much all teams, to be honest. The job that he did, especially to get Accrington up into League Two, up to League One, winning promotion. They won the league. And they had a very good squad that year. Remember, that's a Billy Key, Caden Jackson was very good for them, and the more experienced pros. They had a very good team, and they won quite a lot of games, and they deservedly got promoted. And and they had a couple of solid years in League One. Again, not with nowhere near the resources that a club like Gillingham has, and that's credit to him. Yes, all right, maybe things got a little bit stale and downhill near the end. Getting back into League Two, and the year he was he lost his job. I think there was about 16th around that part. So yeah, I think maybe his time had come. Like I said, I feel like he should have been treated a bit better for all the years of service, especially with the statements at the time. I thought they was insulting. I think one of the better words. He's had this time off, and he's ready to get back into it. Just intrigued. Just intrigued. You can imagine that he might change a couple of things. He's certainly, I don't think he'll be one to play, really that expansive football. Because let's be honest, I've noticed Accrington, with his teams, they've certainly got some threats, but at times, especially around in League Two, they're tough to beat, and you fully expect that with Gillingham. But my problem is, they're on this cycle again. And they've been on this cycle for a long time, in which, they haven't scored a lot of goals. Granted, they don't concede many, but the worrying thing at the minute, they're on the wrong end of results. And, some of those results and performances, by the looks of things, have been appalling. So it's clear that there's work to do. It's definitely salvageable. I think the best Gillingham I think can hope for now is playoffs. But knowing the state of this league at the minute, as we'll get onto, there's maybe top three shot, but they've got a lot of work to do. But if they get playoffs now, then it's, I think, for the time he has, it's a very good achievement. But and ultimately, that's what they've got to be. That's what they need to aim for. And with the money they've spent, just ridiculous levels, and they've got a good team there. You can imagine that they'll probably sign a few this window as well. So look, yeah, just really intrigued. Very interesting, I think, was my initial thought. And yeah, like I said, I'm quite pleased to see him back in work, to be fair. He seems like a top guy, does John. He's back in the game. So there's that to it. Gills fans, it'd be nice to let us know what your thoughts on that are, because someday, I think it's probably fair to say. Right. We've been away for a couple of weeks. Obviously, we've had Christmas, we've had the New Year, and we've had the festive fixtures and all that. We did do a podcast in which was only released on Spotify in the end, where we did our team of the season so far. Keiron's was just an 11 of Carl Hudlin. Would you still do that if you had your time again with that?
Oh, of course, mate. You know what? The most versatile player I think football has ever seen. Why wouldn't you change it? And again, the justification, he's 6'9".
Get tequila playing. Right. Well, we'll look at a few teams in a minute, because obviously we'll have a bit of a wider discussion at the table in a minute. We'll obviously start with our teams, me being a Grimsby fan, obviously Salford for Jake and Keiron with Newport. We'll start with Salford, because they've been very good, haven't they, recently, Jake, haven't they?
Yeah, it makes a change for once. We just can't concede at the minute. We made a change in goal a few weeks ago where we brought in Matty Young, who's on loan from Sunderland and is 18 years old. And he hasn't conceded, bar one game against Gillingham, of course. It was always going to be Gillingham that we struggle against. But we're one of the best teams at home in the league, which last season we were one of the worst. We've always struggled with that, which is really nice to see that we've actually turned into a little bit of a fortress, the small pitch that can actually help compared to Cleveland's big pitch. So just climb it. Everyone said for a while, if you win a few games, you'll climb this league, and that's exactly what we've done. So we just need to keep maintaining it and push on.
Unbelievable, you beat MK yesterday, and I really wish. Honestly, you'd have loved to have seen some of the stuff that Luke was saying yesterday, or even for the past couple of weeks. Jesus Christ, Luke, I love you, mate, and happy birthday! It's his birthday today. But oh my God, yeah. Let's just say I don't think many referees will be getting many Christmas cards ahead of next year, or maybe certainly over Christmas period. Oh my God. But
I take 90% of the reason to blame. I'll take most of the brunt of the blame here.
Yeah, Mr. Wind Up Merchant, you are absolutely fantastic from you. Going back to Salford though, just very quickly. I mean, you've had this run. And I've noticed that obviously you played lots of Harriet, Morecambe. You played a lot of teams at the bottom during that time. So it's probably easy to say, right, okay, yeah, they're the worst teams in the league in which we've beaten. But, going to MK yesterday probably rubbishes those claims a little bit. But just in general, I mean, with this sort of form, what do you really think has clicked the most? Because, it was a little bit, I just felt it was a little bit, yeah, I think for the first couple of months. And then next thing you know, something's clicked and you're in the top three. So just mental. What do you think has been, the biggest driving factor?
There's way more confidence across the whole team, which obviously comes with good run of form. But Stockton started scoring, which gave us that real attacking outlet. Every time we went forward, it was like, oh, we could score. Compared to earlier in the season, it was more like hold it up, get in the box, which we just weren't doing, or the crosses weren't as good as we would have liked. But now we've got Stockton who's scoring, and everyone's putting bodies on the line defensively, working together, trying to get those clean sheets. So it's not surprising that we have kept these clean sheets.
Yeah. Look, it's just how mental how things change in this league. Absolutely mental. And we'll touch on that a little bit more in a minute. Keiron, Newport County. I mean, we say this form over Christmas, but to be honest, it's been going on a little bit before that. Your assessment of the Exiles' Christmas period?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I'll use the word nearly. And it's probably the word I've been using probably since October, to be brutally honest with you. We're nearly there. We've had some really hard games over the festive period, and I was entirely expecting when we went to Walsall, for example, for them to turn us over, as they have with many clubs this season. However, the Wimbledon game, thought we actually played the more expansive, the better football. But I had a little bit of a tangent before we started recording. We can't put the ball in the back of the net. The one fundamental of football, the one that you expect your striker to mainly be on the end of. It's not happening. We're playing all right football until we get to the final third. And honestly, that's probably how I've always sum up the entire Christmas period. The results, awful. 2 wins since October, and we mentioned it's a results-based game. However, 18th, 6 points clear of the drop. I mean, if we don't start picking up results now, there's a bit of worry, but the actual football, give it another few months and maybe it starts clicking, or just give us a new striker in January, to be brutally honest with you.
Carl Lulling and Cardbow, 2 up top. What more do you want? I mean, come on.
It needs to happen. It needs to happen. Listen, I think the Newport fan base has had their criticisms of Carl Hudlin for a number of months up to now. However, the idea of a 6'9" and a 6'6" striker up front, 4-4-2 style, long balls, all the stuff we associate with this league needs to happen.
Glenn and whipping him in.
Yeah, exactly. So, listen, Nelson Jardine had mentioned he doesn't have a plan B. He has a plan A. That's it. The plan A is the fancy old Swansea way of football. The short passing, the quick passing, heavily relying on possession. But the second that happens, just lob the ball in the box. It'll just be fun. It'll be good fun, even if we were to get on the back end and lose. that front two, mouth-watering stuff for this division.
And just quickly before we move on about how I assess our period of at Grimsby, you've had that game against Morecambe today called off. You said it was a bit of a farce. That's what you initially said to me. But you were going on about earlier that if that game was played and if you'd have lost to Morecambe, serious deep questions would have been asked about Nelson Jardine. Just to confirm, like just everything at the minute. Obviously, you're on a poor run of form at the minute, and I probably do argue. I mean, I do think at times at the minute there's 4 or 5 teams that are worse than you at the minute. But it doesn't take a lot for a couple of teams to get a few results. We've seen Swindon over the period get a few. Accrington have got a couple of wins, in the last couple. Your stance on Nelson Jardine, like, what is it? Because you were mentioned to me that that he's on thin ice a little bit.
Yeah, I think the thin ice comments entirely justified if you were to ever look at our Facebook group or Twitter account. I'm not seeing. I think 99% of those comments are questions being asked of Jardine. Get rid of Jardine. This, that, the other, which it's unfortunate because he's made a lot of sacrifices to come here. He's moved from Portugal. His family is still in Portugal, and he's come and we've seen what the best this group of players has to offer in the games against the likes of Accrington, Doncaster, MK in segments. We've seen some of the best football this team has to offer, but I think a lot of the criticism comes off of the no plan A, the no plan B rather, and only the plan A when it's not overly working. And like we mentioned, and we mentioned this when talking about Mark Barner, it's a results-based game, and if you're not getting them, questions need to be asked. And I don't care how we get results. I don't care if it's 1-0, we have one chance all game. That's what we were doing most of the time last season. So I said it. I said if we had lost to Morecambe today, if the game would have went on, I think there would have been serious questions asked. I think we would have stood 3 points ahead of relegation. And with this inexperienced group of players, I'm not sure whether we could have coped with the pressure of having an inexperienced head coach as well. So I think my stance is if we don't start seeing results relatively soon, just to push us and give us a little bit of a bumper from that bottom two, I do think questions need to be asked.
Mm-hmm. Right. We'll talk. I'll keep this short and sweet about Grimsby. Before we move on to maybe look at some of the other teams and assess, what they've done over the last couple of weeks, and maybe a couple in terms of what they've already done in the January transfer window. Very. It's just we're very inconsistent, aren't we? Like there's no middle ground. We either win or we lose. We win 2, we lose 2. It's just. I can see what we're trying to do. There's a process there, and if the season ended tomorrow, I think we're 9th at the minute. Overall, it's a very promising season, and one I'll be very pleased about. But oh my god, we're frustrating. And I think it's probably come to we knew the season was always going to be one of transition. Always knew that for David Artell to implement his ideas, and we very much have seen the good stuff and the bad stuff over Christmas. Of course, we lost to Swindon, didn't we? Of course we did. Bloody hell. And I saw, and one comment was that that was mentioned in this that they're laughing at me. Look, I state again, nothing against Swindon as a club. I really don't like Ian Holloway. It's as simple as that. We didn't turn up, but to be fair, we had quite a lot of illness that day. Still doesn't excuse it. We were dreadful. Harrogate, we had Harrogate on Boxing Day. We won. Wasn't the greatest game of football. I thought we edged it. We scored, some, 2 pretty good goals. Harrogate, really poor side, really poor. One of the worst. We're lucky that Accrington have come to Blundell Park this season because they were poor generally, and there's some maybe questions to ask about them in the middle. Although they did pick up a good win at Barry yesterday. Port Vale, performance of the season. We absolutely. We ran the show from minute 1 to minute 90. And we fully deserved the win against, I knew that Port Vale, I knew Port Vale were on a bit of poor form then. they've been like that for a while, and there's been a couple of questions asked about Darren Moore in the last couple of weeks, but I didn't expect him to be as poor as they did. Whether, and I think that certainly made an element to it, but we wanted that day, and we won that 3-0. Would have been a few more. I think they had a bit of a period where they came at us a little bit second half, but they didn't. We looked okay. We looked quite sound defensively. Something I've not said a lot this season because we just haven't been. We were very good that day. We deserved the win, and then we had that follow-up game against Accrington on New Year's Day. I thought for the majority of it we played well. We've lost the game. We've made some poor decisions, weren't clinical enough, and we've a couple of errors, and that's why we've lost the game against Accrington. To be quite honest, they're a poor side. They're a really poor side, and the game should have been done before that penalty was given. And don't even, because that was just no. And then we went to Bradford yesterday, 3-1, arguably our worst performance of the season. I think there's maybe a case in which I think some of the players were tired. That was certainly the excuse that I think Artel gave, but I'm not buying that because everyone else has played the same amount of games during that period. We've had options to change it. Bradford bullied us from minute 1 to minute 90, and they deserve their victory. As much as I kind of hate to admit that, to be fair, and that's without Andy Cook, who we'll touch on a little bit, probably looking through these teams. But yeah, that was really disappointed yesterday, and we've got a tough run of games coming up. Notts County next. That's going to be really difficult. But get your scores in early. I think it could be 6-7 Notts. It's neither that or they'll win 3-2 in the 90th minute, because every time we play Notts, it's always guaranteed to have drama. Let's just put it that way. I mean, look, 5-5 last season. Mental. Look, same problems. We can't defend. We could score a few. Need to be a little bit more clinical. I don't think we'll do an awful lot in January. I think we know what positions we sort of need. We could do with another winger. We could do another centre half, to be honest. I'd quite like us to shift out, like Raquel Pag and Donovan Wilson. They're out of contract in the summer, so we might probably wait until then, unless one club wants to come for it there, because I'd imagine that they're having they're on a fair bit of wage. And we've got Charles Verdham to come back, and to be fair, that solves our problems out. We're crying out for pace, absolutely crying out for pace, and a fit Verdham, can do that. We saw the early season start that he had. He started the season on like a house on fire. It's just keeping him fit. So I do fully expect us to bring another winger in this window, as Artel has alluded to. But yeah, just very frustrating. It makes me want to bang my head against the wall, this team, because there's something in it. There's a good team in there. But oh my God, like there's been periods where we just. But the thing is, the weird thing is, we're in the mix. We are in the mix, and we'll talk about the league now. Actually, we know that Walsall are flying, absolutely flying. They had a game called off again at the weekend, but I think they've won like 7 in a row and they're 10 points clear of Crewe in second. We mentioned that Salford are third, and then you got Port Vale, Wimbledon, Notts County, and Doncaster that make the playoffs. Bradford are only 2 points behind Doncaster in 8th, and we're 3 points behind Donny currently in 9th. And then you look below that. Chesterfield 10th, 34 points. MK Dons 11th, 34 points. Bromley 12th, 34 points. And maybe you'd even look down to the likes of, you got Cheltenham 13th on 31 points, Gillingham 14th on 30 points. And I think that's probably where it ends, to be honest. Ridiculously tight. Well, right, lads. We've obviously had this Christmas period. Games have been and gone. Teams have played. Is there any team there, mainly in the teams that I've mentioned, or just in the wider table bit? We'll probably look at more teams around the bottom in a minute. But is there any teams maybe from there in which you want to point out for being good, or or not so good? Any problems there? Any things that you've liked? I don't know, just anything really.
I think it has to be Bromley. The run they've been on is come out of nowhere, really. A couple of weeks ago, probably a couple of months ago now, we were looking at them thinking, need a couple more results just to help them avoid the drop, and they've put a really good run together. And the most impressive thing is they've not changed anything. They've still got the lowest percent possession in the league. They're still playing the exact same way that they were, and they're picking up some really good wins. They've got points off Port Vale and Walsall, which not many teams have actually got a point off either of them. They obviously beat Gillingham, beat Newport quite convincingly, sorry, Keiron. And then barring today, it's been pretty perfect for them.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, what a job Andy Woodman's done. And it comes back to that point. It's maybe the amount of, I think, amount of predict. Look, you can say a lot on predictions. You know, look at ours, are terrible. But I saw quite a lot that had Bromley down there. As in, I saw some that thought they'd go down. I didn't think that for a second. I really didn't. And it was at that point where I probably wouldn't have been surprised if they're mid-table. I think they have a squad suited for it, and I think they'd take to the league like a duck to water. And certainly in Andy Woodman's case as well, terrific job he's done there. But all of a sudden, again, it just proves that a few wins and a few good results, and you're very much in the mix. They're 6 points. They're 6 points adrift now. They obviously had that defeat at Crewe. I mean, look, Crewe, very good side. But for Bromley, for their first season, there's certainly a chance. I mean, there's a couple of players you can point out. Obviously, Michael Cheek's the obvious one. Another goal today. Very good for them. I mean, they've had Danny Imre for the first half of the season. It does sound like they're going to lose him. I think I saw Wickham were looking at him, and that's going to be a big blow. But they're a very good team. They know exactly what they're doing. That's they've got a lot of big men. They can score goals. They're very good, with set pieces in particular. I watched the game against Newport for the highlights, and I think their first 3 goals were corners, and I'm not surprised about that one bit because in terms of the team they've got some big players, and but I've never seen a team so tall in Bromley. But look, terrific what they've done, and they're very much in the mix. They are. Is it a case of maybe overachieving? Perhaps, but I think there might have been some maybe thought they might have been capable. I think if you're Bromley, I think you're just enjoying the ride at the minute. Although, like I said, I think today was disappointing. I think it was say the least, but again, Crewe are a good side. Keiron, anyone for you?
I'm gonna go for almost the opposite end of the impressing, and I'm going to say sorry to Luke on this one. It's MK. They're 11th, despite the fact that on paper they've got the best squad in the league, and you'd imagine they won't need many additions by any stretch of the imagination. We've heard Luke say that there's probably 6 or 7 names that potentially aren't up to standard for that squad. But then you mentioned Scotland.
It does sound like there's a lot of outgoings.
Yeah. It does sound like there's a lot of outgoings. But my question, and I think it's the main reason I kind of wanted to point them out, they've got on paper one of the best 11s in the league. They've got a manager who pulled off absolute miracles last season with Crawley. What do they need to push further? Because you would even say now, if they were to finish 6th, 5th, anywhere out of that top 3, would you say it's a positive season? You could maybe argue season of transition, different manager, but everything's there for that club to absolutely flourish. But at the same time, it's not showing by any stretch of the imagination.
I just think in answer to that question, I think the level of expectation was huge for MK, and they've come nowhere near. All right, granted that was under Mike Williamson at the time, but I mean, Scott Lindsay's come in. I mean, they've had a good few wins. I mean, look, they're not his players, but you can imagine. But some of them are. That's the thing. Some of them are. He knows a few of them through his time at Crawley early last season. You can imagine that. I still think if they make playoffs, I think they've massively underachieved. I can't see beyond it because of some of the signings they did in summer, some of the money that they've spent. They might do a little bit this window, but I think the main thing for them is outgoings, because especially that's what Luke has alluded to. I think they need to get a lot of people off the wage bill because they've got a big squad. No doubt they've got the players, and I won't be surprised if they make playoffs. And Scott Lindsay's a brilliant manager, but I can't help but think they've underperformed. They've underachieved, even if they do make playoffs. That's just my instincts.
I don't think there's much of an argument to not say it, right? But like you mentioned, their expectation was so high that potentially they fall under it. Like I meant, like we kind of know when it comes to football, when you change managers, managers obviously have different styles of playing, but I feel that MK squad has enough to be able to, adapt to Scott Lindsay's way of football, and it's not a million miles off of what Mike Williamson's is anyway. But yeah, I even question if they do make playoffs. I mean, yes, when they've got the manager that they played last season in the playoffs, and for Luke's case and for Luke's own reasons, I won't talk about how that went for MK, but I do question as well, is there enough characters in there if they make playoffs to go the full way?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think that's a really fair point. Yeah, it's just that expectation, and I've been really underwhelmed by him. It's as simple as that. But I'm also under the impression I don't think they need a whole lot to really suit what Scott Lindsay wants to do. That's the only thing I'm sort of holding on to, I think. But yeah, I've been disappointed with him. It's just as simple as that. If I had to pick one, look, I think there's a couple of teams. Walsall just that winning machine at the minute. They look unstoppable. I think there's probably
100 points in my eyes now.
Yeah,
I think it.
Yeah, you called it the other day.
I called it the other day, and I'm still called. They're so good, and I think that the thing for me that convinces me about Walsall so much is that they've had last season when they had Freddie Draper. Was it Freddie Draper they had? And
I'm looking. Yeah,
yeah, and then the season prior they had Danny. It was Danny Johnson, who they've now got permanently. But they've now, of course, got Nathan Lowe. And what I've often seen with Walsall is they've had this one lone player. He's absolutely flourished. He's been recalled, and they've fallen off a cliff, and they've ended up mid-table. But the thing that convinces me about this Walsall side, albeit yes, Nathan Lowe is the standout player of that club without question, they've got players to almost replace him. They've got options there to mean that team is still fluid and still plays the way that Matt Sadler wants, and I think it's not even the worrying thing. Is if anything, it's the worrying thing for the entire division. In the way that I generally feel that even if they have Nathan Lowe recalled, and I don't think he'll even be recalled, I think if Stoke wanting him to develop, the best way he's going to develop is playing regularly, scoring goals, and being top of the league. If he moves on now to, let's say, a League One side, he's going to have to take probably a couple of months to suit in, and then you only probably have about 12 games left then, and is he really going to be able to adapt to the system that well? But yeah, for me, I think we talked about this the other day. Is it Northampton who have the record for the most points, 99? I think Walsall, if it hasn't been done already, I think Walsall are going to be the first team to break 100 points. They look that good.
Yeah, and that was a record that was set by Chris Wilder, who was the manager back then, obviously doing a very good job at Sheffield United at the minute. Yeah, I fully agree with Nathan Lowe. I think if you're Stoke at the minute, as much as there will be a host of clubs looking at him, and rightly so, because he's been absolutely sensational for Walsall. Absolutely sensational. I think the worst thing you can do at the minute is recall him, maybe send him to another club. Yes, all right, he might, hit the ground running straight away. And, I've got no doubts about that. He's got a bright future ahead. But if you want to keep the momentum going, he's clearly loving life at Walsall, clearly loving it. There's a chance for, a promotion on the CV just from there. And he looks at the minute, on course to be the league's top goal scorer. There's a couple of, there's a little bit of competition around him with like some Michael Cheek at the minute. Was Andy Cook. We'll touch on him very quickly in a minute. But it's the worst thing they can do is just sort of scupper that progress. I think he's currently making with Walsall, and that's having an effect, around the team. I think, there's certainly January's a big month for Walsall. It's not, I don't think it's really much of what they can do. It's in terms of income is what they can do, just keeping hold of some of those players. We've seen reports of Jamie Jealous has got League One interest. There was an article, I think, from Football League World saying that he'd rejected a new contract, but I think he's got an extra option on his a year option on his deal at Walsall anyway. He's huge for him. A couple of other players, Connor Barrett, terrific for them. Likes of Taylor Allen. I've said that right this time. It's been very good for them. Liam Gordon, Jamil Matt, just a very good team, and they work so well. And if they keep those core players, I do think they'll do it. I honestly do think they'll hit Northampton's record the way they're going at the minute. It's just maybe if it gets to the second half of the season, there's maybe that risk that they might be a little bit complacent. That's what I might see. And look, I think they've certainly got wiggle room. They've got a couple of games in hand as well. And I think 10 points currently at the top. So they've certainly got room to manoeuvre, but they don't look like slowing down. And I think the victory against Notts County in particular cemented that, because I thought, going to Meadow Lane, Notts County, they found a bit of form, because we were talking about Stuart Maynard's situation before we broke up for Christmas. He's got a few results together, but the character to come back from 1-0 down in there, I think, it speaks so many volumes. And I really love this Walsall team at the minute. And, if they don't win the league, something is incredibly wrong. It's as simple as that. They've been one of the best League Two sides in terms of what results based and currently at the minute. I've certainly seen, since we've certainly when Grimsby have been in League Two, I think they're right up there in terms of the quality. Very good team. Matt Sadler, terrific job there. I mentioned Andy Cook, and I did want to touch on Bradford. I mean, you've got Notts County that have had a bit of form as of late. AFC Wimbledon have as well. A tad bit inconsistent, but they have them. Port Vale have been dreadful, to be quite honest, but they did pick up that win against Doncaster yesterday. That could be the result they need. That could be the, that's something that just ignites their season again. It could be that. Although, like I said, Doncaster have been quite underwhelming a little bit at the minute recently, a little bit inconsistent. I think Bradford certainly want to look at though, because they've had a decent run. They've won 4 of their last 6. They drew the other with Barrow. But obviously, look, they've got a very well-drilled side as it is. They've certainly got a lot of threats in that team, and they absolutely played us off the park yesterday. I'm just going off that, basically. But obviously, the big news about it looks like Andy Cook's going to be out for a lengthy period. That could be a problem. I'd imagine they'll be in for a striker, but you've got Andy Cook's goals, and I think they'll be hard to replicate. I think from anyone else.
Yeah, totally agree. He scored 12 goals this season, and their next biggest scorer is 3, and they've only scored 33 goals all season. So he scored nearly 30-40% of their goals. So to lose that for a lengthy period is going to be really, really tough. It'll be a bit of a blow to everyone's confidence when you lose someone like Andy Cook. So they need to replace him well.
And of course, they've already been busy in the transfer window already. They've already brought in 2 midfielders, George Lapsley from Gillingham, which I don't mind that deal, to be honest. And is it Brandon Keeler from Birmingham on loan? There's a couple of midfielders there. I mean, they're absolutely stacked in midfield now, with some of the players that they've got there, like Patterson, Smallwood's there, and a few others there. They're not short of midfielders. Walker, there's maybe a little bbit talk around him, but they're certainly sat there. And, maybe they are clicking. Maybe they are, but dare I say it's Bradford? There's still a long way to go. But I think the early indications are there that I think they know they need a striker. I think they need more goals in that team. I don't think they'll properly push the boat out. But yeah, I mean, look, whatever they do, they're not getting a player as good as Andy Cook. It's as simple as that. But I think they're certainly, for what they've done recently, maybe want to keep an eye on. Just in terms, quick look at the relegation battle. We'll quickly mention, more teams are on mid-table eventually at the minute. Maybe look, any teams in there that has maybe surprised you. I say I'm not. Swindon have picked up a few results. Carlisle haven't, and their position is getting more scary week on week at the minute. Morecambe are weird. They've had a couple of wins since, but Harrogate looked poor. Tranmere probably a big win against Carlisle yesterday, but not a great side. Accrington a couple of wins for them has maybe moved that up. And I think maybe if Newport don't get their act together, they're sleepwalking into it. Just any thoughts just around that area in general, basically.
Instead of the team that worries me the most out of that relegation battle, I think, first of all, Carlisle, unless they have a massive January that benefits Mike Williamson and his style of play, I think they're down. Just out of the way of, you can tell, off of Mike Williamson's at a lengthy enough period, I feel, for those players who, realistically, on paper, are not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely not, the worst in the division. He's had enough time, I feel, to get those players used to the way that he wants to play. And that they're evidently, for whatever reason, it's not being reciprocated. So I feel they need a massive January. But I feel like the team that worries me that aren't in that bottom two the most is Harrogate. Just out of the way of, they almost feel like, you look at some of their recent results, they can't buy a goal. They're really kind of, I think, recently in recent years, you feel they potentially overachieved with the resources they've had being relatively sustainable and comfortable in League Two. But I think, for me now, again, they're struggling to find goals. If I'm not mistaken, they've scored 21 so far this season, which is one of the lowest in the division. So I think that unless they can find that reliable goal scoring pattern, they concede quite a few. I feel like they could very much be sleepwalking into a relegation battle as well, because it's only 5 points. That's 2 games when you look at it that one way.
Interesting. Jake, any there that catches your eye?
Yeah, I'll say Colchester, because they pulled themselves out quite really, really well, to be fair. They looked like they were in a little bit of a rut, but they've turned it around. They're in a really good run of form, bar the last 2 games, which will disappoint them. But there are worse teams than them, which will be good for them, because I can't see them being dragged into it anymore.
No, and I never got that impression with Colchester. Actually, there was maybe a little bit there, but I was always adamant that their squad is very good. They're certainly hard to beat. They went how many clean sheets do they keep in a row? Let me have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They kept six straight clean sheets in the league.
Most of those were 0-0s, right? Because the amount of draws they get is unreal.
Yeah, and three of those. The 3 draws that they did have, all 3 were 0-0s. But you see the teams that they did, the wins that they did have. 1-0 win over Grimsby. They battered Swindon 4-0, and then they beat Gillingham 2-0. That run obviously ended where they drew 1-0 with Doncaster, but it sort of kept their beat run going. But as you say, 2 disappointing results, losing to Swindon very late on for a 3-2, and then losing 2-0 at home to Accrington yesterday. Very good results for those 2 in particular, with points that they need. But yeah, I think looking at that, Carlisle. I'm surprised Mike Williamson's still on the job, to be honest. I said that after I think that I was fully expecting him to go after they lost to Morecambe, was it? It looked beyond toxic. And I think, it looks like the spending. I fully expected him to spend. They've already brought in Will Patchen in from the Irish League. Elliot Embleton was a player I liked at Grimsby, but he's had a couple of injuries in that time. He signed, was it Corey Whelan from Gateshead? I think someone that Williamson knows well. There's a couple of players in there that that's been rumoured that that Williamson does know. I think what will be their downfall, I think, is Williamson's stubbornness. Like I said, I was saying this to my mate, I see so many similarities with Williamson and Carlisle at the minute with what we did with Artell and Grimsby last season. Artell changed it. I can't see Williamson ever doing that. That's my issue with them. They can sign all these players all you want, but that the important thing that they need to do is to go back to basics. Especially after losing at Tranmere yesterday, it's a really poor result because Tranmere are a really poor side, and there's huge worries over there. But I'm not surprised that that they're certainly spending. Morecambe I think they just look poor all around. Really, it's just one of those. Swindon, a couple of good results together. He had that. I mean, they drew to him 1-2. I mean, they lost to Notts County yesterday. They're a good team now, but it does prove that they can get results. Holloway is having a little bit of an impact. Accrington, couple of wins there. Tranmere was my biggest worry. I think, there's not a lot of goals in this team. The place is getting toxic, and, they beat a very poor Carlisle side. They really need to back that up, although they've got Walsall next. So, yeah, good luck. But that's, and Harriet are very much sleepwalking into it. All right, good win at Barrow yesterday. Stephen Clements, I think, has to be on thin ice as well, to be honest, with the run that they've been on at the minute. And, they really needed that win. They really needed it. I'm concerned for Barrow. I won't be surprised maybe if there's a couple more results like that. A club statement might be coming their way. One thing we should probably mention as well, there's a couple of clubs we haven't mentioned. I mean, Cheltenham, again, quietly going under the radar, going about their business. Fleetwood, we didn't mention this at the time because this happened obviously, a few years before. Sacked Charlie Adam, replaced him with Pete Wild. Terrific appointment. No more to be said there. Quick thoughts.
Yeah. It felt like a harsh sacking because they weren't dreadful, but they weren't pulling up any trees by imagination. However, to get Pete Wild in is a really good appointment. They need a bit of stability, so I do hope they back him because they're changing managers a lot at the minute. So if they give Pete Wild time, let him be a bit of a project like ourselves been at Grimsby, they will build something and they will work their way back into League One.
It just ticks so many boxes as well. Relatively local to where he is. Fleetwood have, they've got a little bit of money behind him. I still think they've got a decent squad in their hands. They clearly need, I think, a few more bits in January, but there's a good core there that he can work with. Maybe not this, never say never, but I think it'll be more eyeing up towards next season now. I mean, if it can get a bit of a run going, I mean, never say never, but, they're quite a little bit behind now. Albeit they have played, a few games less than everyone else, but I think they'll certainly be a team to look out for next season. I like Pete Wild, very terrific manager. A little bit sad how it, sort of unveiled at Barrow in the end, but you always thought he was going to get a decent job. Maybe the fact he hasn't gone to League One maybe is a little bit surprising for me, but look, it's Fleetwood's gain, and I can't say any more other than I really like the appointment. I think going away from giving former players the chance. I think they needed someone that was proven at this time, and Pete Wild is he's just perfect all round, just perfect. And that's pretty much it. Yes, we'll probably look into the more games next week, but I really wanted to do this one because obviously we'd missed a fair bit in that. And we should probably mention that no seagulls were harmed during this record. If you saw at Blundell Park the other week, with Cam Janet hitting that ball straight into that seagull. We should sign him up. He might be a good winner. 100% pass completion rate. Could do with a bit of that.
Pass. Yeah, it's a really good pass, wasn't it? He controlled it. He controlled it in the air, and you'd assume a seagull who doesn't have that much football ability would hit the ball straight out. But to give credit, it was a brilliant touch.
Yeah, seagull, as the crowd chanted literally seconds after. That was great.
Yeah, didn't signed up. What a touch.
Yeah. Unbelievable, Yeah. He'll be going back there telling you what happened. Yeah, I've just got a contract at Grimsby Town. David Artell was a big fan. Just very quickly,
just getting a contract with some chips. What a guy!
Fantastic. Yeah. I just hope he just doesn't mind. I just want to show this very quickly as well. What we did is the host league table. We should have mentioned it with Salford beating MK Dons the other day. That shooted Jake up to third. That's put Luke bottom, which has got me. I mean, Keiron's top. I mean, look, the 6 goals that they scored against MK Dons, that was a sight to behold over. That was a sight to behold over the festive period. But I mean, look, the second, might do a little bit of a forfeit. I don't know. I've not decided yet.
Get a forfeit where because if Luke ends up at the bottom, I feel like he should do a podcast entirely dedicated to AFC Wimbledon.
Brilliant,
in a Wimbledon kit.
Yeah. I'm thinking the winner decides what the loser does. I don't know.
Got it. All right, come on, you Port boys. Even if we go down, at least we'll top that table.
Perfect. Right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for listening. It's great to be back. Obviously, let us know your thoughts. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, download the podcast, wherever you get that from. This has been Fourth Tier Fever. This has been me, Jake and Kieran on this week. We'll be back next week to discuss a little bit more. Take care. We'll see you soon.